Kia ora koutou. Welcome everybody. Great to have you all here for our NATINA Korero today with Yolanda Julies. I'm Kofrian Wadia Toko Ingoa. I'm the founder and chair for NATINA, the Neuroscience and Trauma Informed Network Aotearoa. And this is going to be our last Korero for this year. And we're really, really fortunate to have Yolanda here today. Now, Yolanda, before I do the introductions, I'll get us going with the karakia. So karakia te matanga. Manakitia tēnei hui, manakitia tēnei ropu, manakitia tēnei whānau. Tainoa ki tēnei kaupapa. Arahina nā korero, arahina nā patai, arahina nā ture nei, kia puta ai te maramatanga. So bless this meeting, bless this group, bless this family as we come together for this gathering. Guide the discussions, guide the questions, guide the intent so that we move on to greater understanding. Abine. Welcome, everybody. So we've got Yolanda with us today. Now, Yolanda is the Tomoaki principal of Waikirikiri School, and Yolanda, actually, they've got a new name, and I will let you share that, Yolanda, in a minute. But Yolanda has been a principal at the school for many, many years now, and what they have done is they have adopted a trauma-informed approach aligned with the Whare Tapa and the Te Wheke model, and they've really shifted the culture within their school to make sure everybody is really inclusive, everybody's compassionate, and everybody has a sense of belonging and well-being. I'm really interested in this because I've always thought, in terms of inclusion, the understanding of inclusion, when I first started out as a parent of disabled children, I always looked at inclusion through the disability rights approach. But as I've sort of, gone down my journey, I've realized there's so many other approaches and pathways to strengthen inclusion. And the neuroscience trauma-informed approaches are one, and also the Te Ao Māori approaches, because Te Ao Māori has so many, principles that are really holistic and that weave the community together. So I'm really, really interested in today's Korero, Yolanda. So without further ado, can I hand it over to you to share a bit about yourself and introduce yourself to us, who you are, where you're from, and what's got you interested in this, space, and sort of, led to the success in the culture shift that you've achieved within the school and community. So on to you. Now you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Kia ora, friend, and everybody else on our Zoom hui. I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to be part of this awesome kaupapa. Like I said before, I hope that whatever I'm sharing will add value to whatever knowledge we might have around our topic of trauma-informed practice. I am originally from South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa. I've been in New Zealand for about 27 years now, came around 1999, I think. But I'm pretty much, from the older generation, grew up in the apartheid era, and I pretty much understand or relate to my kids and living in a township and just understanding their background so I can, on a daily basis, relate to the kids. I have been brought up in a Christian home by my grandparents. I was adopted by them, and everything, all my values and principles and my beliefs are based around, the upbringing that I had from them. And I think I also relate really well to children who are being brought up by their grandparents, because I think grandparents are amazing, and they're doing an amazing job of, bringing up tamariki, and sometimes they have limited resources or health to do that. So I have great admiration for our kaumata, our Pakeke, who are tasked with looking after their mokopuna. And I think I relate really well to, because I was that child, different and being brought up by my grandparents, strict background, different set of values. And so I can actually really relate to when especially our early adolescent students are struggling at school with, having to conform to the nannies and papas rules and, the old school rules. So I can really relate to that as well. I have a daughter and I have two grandsons. My 13-year-old is starting secondary school next year.
Nice.
And my oldest Moko is 20 and he's just come back from Otago University, finishing off his second year, doing Bachelor of Science, not wanting to attempt the teaching. Yeah, but I'm really I feel honored to be here and to just share the knowledge that I have. My first teaching job in New Zealand was at Tarangawa School in Taumarunui. I taught there for 2 years, and then I started at Reri School in Gisborne as a teaching principal, Te Whole School, before my friends wrote me in and said, no, you better suit it for a Māori medium kura, and that's when it started. So I've been at Waikirikiri School for about 20 years now.
Amazing.
And I've seen, many changes and I've, met many people along the way. So I'm part of the furniture, part of everything. And I've seen, lots of things. And I have great admiration for our kids, our tamariki, because they are on a daily basis having to deal with, issues that are not of their making, and they are just victims of the circumstances. So I believe that I was placed there to be an advocate for them and to be a voice for them, because I feel that sometimes, our education system is not supportive of the needs of our kids. And if I can do something to make a difference in their lives by the way that I treat them and the way that I teach them and the way that I lead our teachers, then I think I have kind of fulfilled my calling. And that's what I'm all about. It's just about creating a special place for our kids where they feel loved and cared for and understood.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing, Yolanda. Yolanda, how, in terms of that move, because you mentioned, Waikirikiri is a Maori medium school. Is it bilingual or is it fully te reo Maori being spoken?
We are a bilingual kura. We have 4 immersion classrooms, level 1 te reo Māori, and then 5 level 2 and level 3 classrooms, mainstream bilingual. So pretty much tikanga Māori, Ngāti Porou kura, really staunch in that respect. And our bilingual name is Te Kura Reorua or Waikirikiri. That's what we call.
Amazing. Tell me, when you made the shift, into that space, because often the reason why I'm asking you this is often teachers say, embracing and adopting te ao Māori within education, they're not very sure how to go about it, or how to go about doing it best. What was that like for you personally? Because you've obviously got the heart and the understanding and empathy of, coming from sort of a smaller community, or the differences of growing up, in a marginalized way, or, with grandparents. So you've got all that coming with you. But within the Te Ao Māori space, what helped you, get onto the waka and really embrace, adopt, and yeah, support everything that was happening.
I think it's probably also my multicultural background that I come from, but I can deeply relate to the values, tikanga Māori values, and I think I connect really well through my values with tamariki and whānau. I'm pretty much on a learning journey still around tikanga Māori and te reo Māori, just, my willingness to learn. But
Yeah.
I was, fortunate that I had great mentors who had walked alongside me and had actually made sure that I was safe in the environment and had, taught me the right things to do. And um, so if you have people that support you, it really helps as well.
Yes, absolutely. Um, so that's your sort of introduction, immersion into the Te Ao Māori space and Tikanga Māori. Tell me a bit about where and how did your interest in the trauma-informed sort of space start off, and how did that evolve and grow? And what helped it? Like, what supported you to get going on that journey?
Well, actually, I stumbled upon trauma-informed practice by
Okay.
accident.
Yeah.
I wanted to, get some New Zealand qualifications. So in 2017, I did my Master's in Educational Leadership. And then I thought, oh, well, I'll, just want to see if I could do my PhD. And
Yeah.
what interested me around well-being was when we came back from COVID and our kids were showing and displaying behaviors that
Um,
were very concerning.
yeah.
And my interest started in looking at a holistic approach to well-being and what that might look like.
Mm,
And then as I was, doing my research for my PhD,
mm,
I kind of looked at a holistic approach and stumbled upon the health models for Māori, and then
yes.
just, continued to learn more about the Te Whare Tapuwha model.
Yeah.
And as I, you know, broadened my knowledge around that and read a little bit more about holistic well-being and what that looks like and the components of it. I also then, by accident, stumbled upon, I don't know if you're familiar with Gabor Mate.
Yes.
Yeah, and just looked at one of his videos where he was talking about trauma. I
Yes.
didn't know or understand anything or have a huge knowledge about trauma. But watching his video, learning about it, and then
Yeah.
again by accident, I got introduced to Dr. Bruce Perry's neurosequential model,
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
and I started to, watch his videos, and then again stumbled on his interview with Oprah Winfrey around
Yes.
what
What
happened
happened to you? Yeah.
years, and
Yes.
kind of my interest in the subject just continued to grow. And the more I learned, the more I could see
Yeah.
the children in front of me, and I could relate to the issues, and it gave me a better understanding of who they are and why they are and how their behaviors and why their behaviors are there. And it sort of gave me an understanding about, when I look at their home situation, the trauma that they experience. And I became really interested in adverse childhood experiences,
Yes.
and did a lot of study around that and looking at, the impacts of that on the trauma
Yes.
brain. And because we see those kids in front of us every
Yeah.
single day. And just, learning more about that gave me the understanding of how I, as an adult or the adult, what I need to change and how I need to change. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't the way that I am now with children. I was really strict and brought up from like that. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
for me, it was just, no, there were no gray matters. It was just the right and the wrong. But over the last 5 or so years, I've learned to change my mindset
Yeah.
about that and learning more about trauma as I understood better. I grew and learned and decided that what I've been doing all these years wasn't the right thing to do, and just decided, yeah, I'm going to do the right thing and I am going to practice what I've learned. And yeah, I can say that it was for me, my personal growth and my journey with the kids the
Yeah.
last couple of years and, leading has actually been one of my better ways of teaching and learning.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. It always heartens me to hear, Yolanda, when principals, teachers talk about the change and shift that they make, because, as a parent, who connects with a lot of other parents, especially of, disabled, neurodivergent children, the impact that teachers and education have on our kids is so significant. And I know I come from a space and I connect a lot with parents who are really passionate about supporting their children and go all out to sort of, support them well. But I also know on the flip side, there are children who don't get any of that at home, and they don't have safe home environments, and they don't have, that love and connection and affection, which is so critical in those early years, developmentally to have. And so for a lot of them, teachers and schools become their second homes. And so it is so important that, kaiako are able to create that space for them where they feel safe, they feel welcome, they feel like they belong. So that's really, really heartening to know how the shift has happened. You've talked about how you've made the shift and you've sort of, had that huge shift, not only in your mindset, but also in your interactions, your practice, how you engage and do things. Tell me, what does that shift look like at a um, at a policy level, or at a senior leadership level? What shifts, concrete shifts, changes did you guys have to make as you went along? And then with that, how did you get your team on board? How did you get all the other kayako and staff aboard the waka, so to speak, and make sure that they are also on that journey of transformation with you?
I think transformation is really personal,
Yeah.
because it requires, like you said, a mindset change.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really hard for leaders to change the mindset of
Yeah.
adults or staff members. But I think if we lead by example and teachers see the change in us as leaders, um, they are better able to, you know, and
Mhm.
they see that we're not perfect as leaders, and a role model that we don't have to be perfect. We only have to be caring and understanding and loving
Yeah.
towards our kids. But I think if, as leaders, we provide our teachers with the necessary support and
Mm.
patience and love and care as we would give to the children, if we give that same care, understanding to the adults, because we want the adults to change. So as leaders, we need to be able to provide support or
Yeah.
the environment for our teachers to grow.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to put support systems in place. So for us, as part of policy or processes,
Yeah.
was looking after our teachers, making sure that their
Mm.
well-being is cared or looked after,
Yeah.
and that when they come to kura, that there is a psychological safe environment for them
Mm.
as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important if we support our teachers to be well. And if we as leaders can take away the barriers for them, then they are better able to do their job the way we require them to do. But it also requires from us to have patience with and meet them where they at and support them through the journey. I have had at the beginning teachers who were resistant. As we always, change. We have people who are resistant to change. But as we give them opportunity to experiment, learn from each other, share knowledge, share good practice, provide space where they learn and we learn together. And when we as leaders are also vulnerable and say, look, I don't know everything, I don't know the answers, to maybe I'm also struggling. But if they see that, I am willing to make changes, I'm struggling, but I am prepared to change, then only, can I expect from them to change. But leaders, I think, needs to lead by example, and leaders need to make or provide for our staff what they need. It's really hard to embed the practices into your school culture if we don't all work together as a team. So it's important to be collaborative, and as a team, we grow together or we walk the journey together and we support each other. Reflective practice. Reflective, practice is really important. We reflect together, they reflect with me or individually, but I know that how I approach what they're doing makes a difference. So, when teachers are resistant and you walk alongside them and you support them and encourage them and empower them to do the right thing, then over time they do change their mindset. But we need to be able to give them that opportunity, that time to make the changes, and we have to acknowledge and affirm, the things that they are doing well. When teachers come and they've walked the journey and they know the right thing to do, and they come back and say to me, "Oh, Kokaya, you know what? Today I've just made I've just done what I shouldn't have done," and I can then say to them, instead of, growling at them and say, what the right thing is to do, but instead of saying, I'm really glad that you've acknowledged, and I'm so proud of you that you know that you have made a mistake, and I'm so proud of you that, you acknowledge that and that you're going to do better next time. And, so we have a conversation rather than a disagreement. And if we, support them on their journey, I think the transformation becomes easier, and embedding the practices into our culture and our ethos and everything that we do, it becomes easier because we're supporting each other, and we're creating that psychological safe environment where it's not only just safe for our children, but it is safe for our teachers as well. So they are allowed to challenge the status quo in a respectful way, but they are also allowed to make changes. So it's not just about what I want, but if we change together and we do things together and we find better ways together, it does not always have to be how I say. But as why we work together and how we and I think because we kind of walked the journey together, we are stronger in our relationships. And I don't think there is another kura where we banter and laugh at each other and laugh with each other as much as we do at Waikirikiri School. You know, so I think we have lots of respect for each other, but we also grow together as a team and work together really, really well.
That's absolutely fabulous. One of the things you mentioned, Yolanda, was how, empowering them, listening to them, giving opportunities for them to say what's important for them, and sort of challenging the status quo and highlighting their priorities and what they see needs to change. That is so key. I've always felt from sort of, that disability space and disability rights space that the voice, choice, control, autonomy, agency of a disabled person, child, their family is so important in terms of giving them that sense of self-worth
Yeah.
and the sense of being in control, feeling safe, and being able to navigate the world at their pace, and in a way that works for them. And I think what you talk about, giving space to teachers is so important because, again, that gives them the confidence and the sort of motivation, I would say, to really work towards that shift and change, because no shift and change is easy. It
No.
takes a lot of, time, effort, and a lot of I think it takes a lot of emotional and mental sort of effort to make that change happen, isn't it? Because it's never easy at the start. Yes, it might become automated later on. You'd sort of think a certain way, you know, sort of do things a certain way. But before you get to that stage, you're putting in a lot of your heart and energy and time and effort. And it's a lot that we ask of, our kaiako in schools. So I think that's a really, really important point you've talked about, empowering them, giving them sort of opportunities to voice themselves, and state what is important for them, really important. Can I ask you a question around the community? What has it been like engaging with the community, through this lens of trauma-informed approaches of a holistic approach towards well-being? What has that been like? Is that something you've embarked on already? Or you're on your journey, and what's it been like? How do you get families on board with that as well, whānau?
I think for tamariki Māori, they cannot be excluded from the whānau.
Yeah.
Whānau is a very important component for tamariki Māori. And everything that we do, all our practices have to be whānau inclusive.
Yeah.
We have support groups for our neurodiverse, the mamas of our neurodiverse tamariki. We have so many activities that our whānau can participate in,
Mm.
and just come and join. And we have activities for mums, for dads, and no one is forced to participate, but whatever they are interested in is what they participate in. And I feel that if we open up our kura for whānau to come in, and we have that, create a safe environment for them also, then they feel welcome and free to come in, because the whole space that we have created is safe for
Yeah.
everyone. We have a wellbeing, we work as a wellbeing team, and as part of our wellbeing team, we have what we call a te kai hapai whānau facilitator, and connects with all liaise on behalf of the school with our whānau. We also have a social worker as part of the team.
Okay.
Senko person is also part of the team, myself as the leader of the team, and then we have a wellbeing teacher and a rangatahi youth mentor. So we work as a team, and as a team, we tap into different areas with our whānau.
Okay.
For example, our rangatahi mentor works with our dads, and we are at the moment, creating meat nights. So our dads come in with the boys and they learn how to skin a deer or cut up the meat. And so we have like these kind of activities that you wouldn't get at another good idea.
Yeah.
But everything is centered around trying to think outside of the box and how can we engage our parents. And while we're doing, the fun activities with our parents, we are building that relationships with them. And we also opening our kura for a power hour of learning, probably once or twice a term. So whānau just come in, sit alongside their tamariki and learn with their tamariki, and understanding, what's happening in the classroom. Whānau are free to come in whenever they, have the opportunity to come and learn alongside their tamariki. So we kind of have an open policy, and nobody has to really, if I'm free, if whānau is there and they want to talk to me, I'm available. And there's no need for us to be that formal where we're just pushing whānau away. You have to have an appointment or you have to come at a certain time. So it's really an open policy, but our priority is to support our whānau, which it doesn't matter what that support might look like. We advocate for our whānau. We support them when they need to. They go through hard times. We have an internal lunch model. We look after our tamariki in terms of, feeding them throughout the day, making sure that they are ready for learning, in a good space for learning. And that also help our whānau if they know that their kids are well taken care of. We have mums that work in our kitchen, in our internal lunch model. And so everything is kind of set up in a way that help our whānau engage in whatever way they feel free to do or comfortable, I would say, to do.
That's so important, isn't it, Yolanda, in terms of whānau being able to participate or engage at a level that's comfortable for them. I remember years ago when my kids were starting school, I gave up a lot in terms of, I stopped working. I made sure I was available for them. And I was really keen to engage with the school and spend time and support as much as I could and do whatever I could, right? And I did that. And I mean, I was really lucky, although it was hard on us financially at the time, going down from 2 incomes to 1 income, we could still manage it. And that was our priority. But I know there are lots of other families who couldn't do something like that. And for them, they're not able to participate, at that sort of, level. And so I think making sure those families don't feel bad about, how much they're participating or not, or engaging or not. I think it's so important because that's something I hear all the time from parents constantly, and the funny thing is there's no right or wrong, way to do it. Because some parents are like, oh my gosh, I've got to put so much time. It's just getting too much. I'm not able to do it. And others are like, we want to go, we want to participate, but we're not welcome. They don't want us. They don't want to engage or let us come in and help or participate or things like that. So I think it's so important, isn't it? Depending on the whānau, where they're at, and then sort of, making them feel comfortable about how much they want to participate or not, is really, really critical, I think, in building that relationship and partnership between school and home, isn't it?
It's always an area where we work very hard because, whānau engagement can be one of our challenges. But if we provide the opportunity, then I think it's easier for whānau to come.
And I love your creative out of the box thinking, the way in which you're trying to engage them and, offering different opportunities because again, the same kind of thing like the, three-way parent interview and things like that going to work for everybody or, not everybody's gonna respond to that. So I really, really love it. When I was on a school board, I remember our principal always used to say, if you want to engage with whānau, make sure there's kai.
Yes,
And then
that's
we always
get,
people coming along. So yes, I think that's one key tip, want to engage with whānau and at Tamariki, make sure there's kai. So important. Yolanda, you've talked about all the shifts and everything that you've made. Tell me a little bit about the hard times. What happens when things get hard? What happens when, you have those big behaviors and emotions? How do you then make sure you're responding in that trauma-informed way? And what helps? Do you have processes, practices that you've embedded to sort of, help everybody through that? And I know we often talk about restorative practice and approaches, I mean, I find there's not enough understanding about it, enough understanding to implement it really well, and make sure it's also affirming to a lot of our, especially our neurodivergent, disabled children, kids who have sort of English as a second language, how and where, can we make sure that those restorative approaches, practices are really fair for everybody and again, beneficial to everybody. Tell us a bit about, what happens when there are those big behaviors. How do you go about navigating them?
Well, we have learned to respond to behaviors differently. As we all know, we understand there is a cycle sometimes, and the cycle starts with, our kids and the behaviors, and when they become dysregulated and their brain is in defense mode and survival mode. So having that understanding first and foremost about, how the trauma brain operates helps us to respond to behaviors differently. So if we understand that our kids are in defense mode and their survival mode, and that we as adults have to be regulated ourselves before we attempt to problem solve, so having that understanding of how to respond to behaviors differently, and making sure that we know our own triggers as adults and understand, where we at when our children become dysregulated, understanding our stress response at the time. So instead of interacting with our children in such a way that will escalate the behaviors, we have learned to respond and not react. And that had come with time, because we had to learn that our brains also become defensive when we become dysregulated, so we can go into a tit-for-tat conversation and escalate and make things worse, because then our children, when we dysregulated, they see us as a threat, and so they escalate further, and that's when we get into a space where we don't want to be, where, the swearing and all the nasty things are happening. So we have learned that if we respond to behaviors differently by harming ourselves, understanding who we are, understanding what our triggers are, understanding our trauma and how we manage ourselves. That is the first great step towards the escalated behaviors. But we also have worked out a system for teachers where we have a pause, breathe, walk away. If I cannot get to the walk away, I have a buddy system. I ask another person, can you please look after my class? And they find a space. We also have the wellbeing team on call. So if they need the wellbeing teacher or somebody to come in and support them. We do not like to send our children away or out of the classroom because that is a form of rejection and it causes resentment. And it also sends a message to the other kids in the classroom. It's just, in order for me to be welcome in this classroom, I need to behave and I'm not allowed to show or how I feel or express myself. And we all know that sometimes there's a lot of underlying things behind the behavior that we see in front of us. And if we understand that the behavior is not personal, and we learn to not take it personally, we are better able to manage the behavior. So we had to learn, quite a lot of how can I say, do a lot of self-reflection on how do I do or how do I behave when the behaviors are there. It takes time to understand that as an adult, I have to be the person who is the bigger person and I have to be the professional person and I have to do the walk away or the de-escalation. We've also have systems where we could possibly co-regulate with our tamariki if they're in a good space, in a space where we could just sit beside them. Sometimes co-regulation looks like I'm just sitting there and I'm holding space for you. I don't necessarily have to communicate with you, but knowing that I'm a safe person and I'm there for you, I'm ready to help you whenever you need the help, but I'm just there, I'm co-regulating with you. Our biggest goal is to teach our children to self-regulate and giving them the coping strategies or the skills to be able to self-regulate and giving our kids the understanding of what's happening in their bodies, giving them opportunity to understand their emotions. And quite often our kids don't have words to express how they feel. And if we give them the language and work through with them when they're in a good space so that they can understand what's happening in their bodies and giving them strategies such as the breathing. We also have what we call a papatuanuka space. And papatuanuka is when our kids try to self-regulate. They have, I think, a Eurocentric way of calling is the anchors. But, some of our kids have significant adults that they can go to that will help them. They've got spaces that they might go to, like, playing on the courts, shooting a couple of hoops until they become regulated. Some of them, have music that they listen to. Some of them love the artwork, or they can go to the gym space, just spend a little bit of time. We do allow for them to do maurako is another great de-stress, especially for our boys. And our girls love the poi and the rhythmic movement of the poi. So there are different things that they do
Yeah.
to self-regulate or to find a space, or our kids have become so good at managing themselves
Right.
um, because they before they they escalate, or before they
Yes.
become dysregulated, they already know what's happening in their bodies,
Yeah.
and they already know that I have to find space, I have to go and self-regulate. But that is also something that comes over time. It grows over time. At the beginning, our kids used to take 15 to 20 minutes to regulate or self-regulate. But now it's about 5 minutes and they're ready to go back into classroom and
Amazing.
engage back into
Yeah.
the learning. But everything that we do, we have to work on deliberately, right? If we intentional about
Yeah.
what we want to achieve, and we know the purpose and we know why we're doing what we're doing, and we keep doing what we know will work, and it's not just doing it today and not doing it tomorrow. So it's consistency, being there consistently and doing things consistently and being predictable as adults,
Yeah.
because that keeps our kids safe. And if we have, I know you were talking about restorative practices, and for me, restorative practice is about having that conversation with our children when they're ready to have the conversation.
Mm.
Um, and it's not like we're accepting the behaviors, but we talk about what we could do differently.
Yeah.
And we talk about how other people feel. And so it's all about teaching our kids. Social and emotional learning needs to be taught to our kids. They need to be taught how to be self-aware,
Yeah.
self-disciplined, and what does that look like and what does that mean?
Mm.
We cannot just accept or expect our kids to know.
Yeah.
In the world that they grow up today, the social media world that they grow up, not they don't often have the ability to communicate or to have face-to-face conversations with each other and understand or see how the impact of their behavior on other people. So when they come to kura and now all of a sudden they have to deal with each other face to face,
Yeah.
quite often it's where they struggle. And if we, through our restorative practices, teach them
Mm.
how to do things differently and how to react differently and how to manage themselves differently, we are actually empowering them and giving them the mana to actually be kaitiaki, or the guardians of their own emotions, their own behaviors. But it's up to us as adults to give them those tools and to, help them to manage themselves. And when we have that restorative conversations, it's about a teaching moment and teaching our kids how they can do better next time.
That is absolutely beautiful. I love how you've said, we need to make sure our kids can be kaitiaki of their own emotions. Um, as much as I've learned over the last few years um, around being authentic, the importance of being authentic, the importance of understanding that no emotion is bad or negative,
Yeah.
We've got to have acceptance for all those emotions that our kids show, that we sort of, show from time to time. Despite that, I think, that conditioning we've grown up with, where we were
Yeah.
told, I don't know about you, but I know we were told when we grew up, you respect people and you don't show, anger, and
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
anger is a bad emotion.
Yes.
But in the moment, what I find is we still go back to that conditioning often,
Yes.
don't we, as adults? Even
Yes.
after knowing all this, we're like, oh, anger's bad. And then it takes us a few minutes or seconds to sort of click on and go, no, no, it's okay. Let's feel this. Let's,
Yeah.
sit with it. Let's process this rather than try and suppress it or block it. And you were talking about Dr. Gabor Mate, and, he often talks about how a lot of the trauma stems from often shame and guilt, those
Yeah.
deeper
Yeah.
emotions that we carry around, that often don't get sort of really dealt with. And so
Mm.
I love how you're creating that space to allow our kids to become the kaitiaki of their emotions, all their emotions. Um, Yolanda, tell me a little bit about how you've woven Te Wheke and Te Whare Tapawha into, your kura and the way you work. Where and how have you sort of gone about doing that? I've often felt sometimes our IEPs, I keep thinking our IEP sort of framework should be something like a Te Whare Tapawha,
Yeah, we actually do
framework
that.
rather
Yeah.
than the outcomes and goals and stuff, because often they get so misused at times, or they get there's a sort of pressure put on the child has to do this, or rather than going, how are we going to wrap around the child, and how is everybody going to come and support the child? So tell me a little bit about how you have woven Te Wheke and Te Whare Tapawha across
Um,
Kura.
I heard you talk about IEP, so part of we've actually replaced kind of the IEP with a wellbeing plan.
Amazing.
The wellbeing plan includes the four
Yeah.
areas of the Te Whare Tapawha.
Cool.
Just so it's divided up, and there are in each of those areas
Yeah.
might be areas that our kids we set goals for them. Sometimes it's little goals for their tinana, little goals for their henenaro, little goals for engaging with whānau, little.
Yeah.
It's just every area of te whare and
Yeah.
the wairua also, and every area we kind of find something that they can work on or work towards.
Yeah.
So their wellbeing plan is centered around those four areas. But Te Whare Tapawha and Rose Pere's Te Wheke model is kind of embedded into our school culture as well. For example, we have our Waihora program, which is a program that we have for our year 6 to 8 students. They
Okay.
come in the morning at 6:30, or they've been picked up by the school van. They come in groups and they participate in physical activities or in the gym. And
Okay.
then they have their breakfast, and then they're in a good space for learning.
Yeah.
So that's one area. And then we have our sports academy. It's another area
Okay.
that we're looking after our kids in terms of their well-being in such a way that they are in a good space for learning.
Yeah.
Then throughout the day, we have our wellbeing practices, which include we start our day with karakia,
Yeah.
waiata, himini, motete, and we go straight into our breathing, yoga, stances, that we do for our kapahaka. And so it's all part of what we do on a day-to-day basis. Nothing is kind of freestanding. It's just part of
Yeah.
our culture
Yeah.
and part of who we are. So creating that safe space or safe environment
Yeah.
where there is such a lot for our kids to do.
Yeah.
The art spaces there, that is a space for their helping them with their wairua.
Yeah.
And the sensory garden is there where it's a little bit, flooded at the moment with, it's not
Yeah.
what it used to be, but the sensory garden is there for our kids to find that calmness
Yeah.
and find peace.
Yeah.
We have a puna ora where our kids can come and will always be an adult available if
Yeah.
they need to come and regulate or have somebody to talk to. So everything that we do at our kura is te whare tapawha or te wheke,
Yeah.
whichever thing that we're doing. So it's so part of our culture that it's so ingrained in what we do. There is no kind of, yeah, we're going to do kapaka now. Oh, yes, we're going to do that. It's all part of it, so interwoven into our day-to-day practices that it just it's just part of who we are.
Yeah. I think one of the things you've talked about that really stands out to me is the importance of ingraining it and not adding it on
Yes.
as an
Yeah.
additional thing to do. Um, and I think when I draw sort of parallels with the early intervention space, we talk about routine-based intervention rather than having a therapy session, which is an add-on or something separate. You have, everything you need to do incorporated into the daily routines. And so that's what you're talking about. You're talking about really taking the elements of Te Wheke and Te Whare Tapawha and weaving it across, the school environment, processes, practices, programs, all of it, isn't it? And
Yeah. Yeah.
that solidifies it and that sort of makes it consistent. But also it means then that you've got it across the board and children can access what they need when they need rather than going, this is the add-on and now we're going to do this and this is an add-on and now we're going to do this, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I don't see trauma-informed practice as a program.
Yeah.
I see trauma-informed practice as a day-to-day
Yes.
practice that we live and
Yes.
breathe, and that's who we are.
Yeah.
It's not a freestanding or isolated program.
Yeah.
Wellbeing is also not an isolated program.
Yeah.
Wellbeing is part of who we are. And if we want our kids to be well,
Yeah.
and ready for learning,
Yeah.
we have to provide them with the tools or the means to be in that optimal space for learning. Quite
Mm.
often people say, if you prioritize well-being, you must not be prioritizing learning. But I say it is because I
Yeah.
prioritize or place high value on learning. That is why I want my kids to be in an optimal space for learning, and they can only be that if they are well
Yeah.
in all areas. And for me, that's really important that we don't see it as a add-on, as you said
Yeah.
before, but it's part of who we are, and it is our duty of care.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to be to make sure that our kids are well.
And I think the measure of the success of whether what you're doing is really trauma informed or not, whether it's really sort of, embedded across the culture or not, is basically how the children and the families and the teachers who walk into the kura
Mm.
feel, isn't it? Whether they feel that sense of safety, whether they feel that sense of belonging or not.
Yes.
And learning can't happen without that sense of safety, and it can't happen, unless you have, that relationship
Yeah.
and belonging within that space, and with the teachers you're working with, obviously. So, yeah, it's so critical, isn't it? We're especially in this current political climate, we're focused so much and so heavily on sort of the science of learning, but nobody sees, the whole science of sort of inclusion and belonging and wellness, all those underlying layers that need to be there. aren't sort of, given priority, unfortunately. So it's really fantastic to see that despite all those shifts that are happening, you at your kura are standing firm and doing the things that matter in terms of, that focus on well-being and focus on inclusion and belonging and community, growing, partnership with the community, which is so critical. And yeah, and that literacy and numeracy will follow as you go along. Tell me something before we wrap up. Two questions. One is, I know you stumbled upon a lot of things and you accidentally, come across these fabulous pieces of information and, work that then you've incorporated. If you were to sort of, give advice to kaiako Tomoaki who are starting out on their journey in the trauma-informed sort of, space, what would you advise to them? Where should they start off? How should they go about? What are the key pieces? I know you've talked about Dr. Gabor Mate and Bruce Pere. Who else, what else should they be looking at to, get on their journey of becoming trauma informed and neuroscience informed?
I always say it starts with us knowing yourself and being self-aware. If
Yeah,
that's a place to start is understanding our own
yeah,
being, a way of being, how we are, who we are,
yeah,
what we are, and how we come across.
yeah,
And if we understand ourselves and know who we are and know what our values are, what we stand for, we are better able to, when things aren't going well, we know what keeps us grounded. And if we are strong in what our beliefs are and know what our non-negotiables are
yeah,
and why we believe what we believe and why we standing firm on certain things, and just being really aware of how we come across and how we treat others. I think it's that self-awareness that, and if we can, as teachers provide, or as leaders provide opportunity for teachers to have maybe a PLD session,
mm,
a staff session, where we explore who we are, give opportunity for them to actually, because I think that we really, because sometimes we give teachers opportunity for PLD,
yeah,
but there is not always that opportunity for teachers to look inwards,
yes,
self-reflect, and talk about
yeah,
things that are sensitive but in order to do that, we have to make sure that our environment is safe,
sure,
psychological safe. So I would say, if we want to do trauma-informed practice, we need to make sure that our environment is psychologically and physically safe,
yeah,
and that is in terms of relationships. How connected, how trustworthy, how honest
yeah,
is our relationships with each other.
yeah,
And if we connect and we have good relationships with each other, we open up a space
yeah,
where we feel safe to be vulnerable and to talk about things that matter or things that we wouldn't otherwise talk about. But, and it doesn't always have to be a heavy conversation, because mine started as a simple staff meeting where I asked a question, to the staff members. I asked, "Oh, what are some of the things about the children that triggers you?" And we
Yeah.
started to call out, all the other things that triggers us, and I wrote it all down, and we all shared, and so calling out, and I asked, oh, what are some of the attitudes about the children that triggers you? And we started writing. So we had a whole book, and then I said to them, okay, so out of all these things that we've written down, what are some of the things about the adults on that same page
Yeah,
that
yeah.
triggers you? And so we highlighted, and doing the exercises like that in an unthreatening way makes us realize that, yes, as adults, we do trigger each other, we do trigger, and these are the things that triggers us, and it's not just the children, but we as a team, we trigger each other as well. And if we understand, it's the environment that we create for our teachers to be safe and say and do what that's what's on their heart to do, and creating that, not just but creating an opportunity for them to feel free to voice and to say.
Yes.
I think it all it's all about that relationship, trust,
And
honest relationship.
what you've touched on is so true. I think, within the polyvagal theory, those three questions, am I seen?
Am
Am
I
I
heard?
heard? Am I
Yeah.
soothed? And I always think about soothed as being valued, because it's just for me, with my own personal experiences over the years with my children and then the kids I work with. I always think, even before the comforted and soothed comes in, it's that value. If you're not valued, you're not never going to be comforted.
Absolutely.
So I always sort of think about it, am I seen? Am I heard? And am I valued? And I think if we started really looking within our context, doesn't matter where, whether it's with adults, with children, in the home even, if we started looking at how do I make sure this child or this person is seen, heard, and valued, I think we would be creating that safe space, isn't it? So they can speak up and they can voice themselves, and sort of be their authentic, true selves. Um, Look, thank you. This has been such a fabulous conversation, Yolanda, and I've been taking notes. So if I'm looking away, that's what I was doing, scribbling notes. There's so much practical stuff that you've given as well in terms of, what can be done. Um, what's your hope? What's your hope, dreams for the future? Where to from here? I know you're sort of, on this journey still, and we're always learning and growing, but what are your hopes and dreams for our kids, our families, our, educators and leaders in Aotearoa? What is it that you are hoping for and looking for moving forward?
Oh, I would like to see an education system that caters for the needs of all our tamariki.
Mm,
Um, I think that some of our systems are not doing any justice to our tamariki, and adds at times more trauma to our tamariki. So I'm hoping that more people or more educators would understand that trauma-informed practice, or providing opportunity for our neurodiverse tamariki
mm,
to be the best that they can be, the optimal best, and just provide for them the opportunity to be included in education in the best way that they can. I feel that sometimes we judge our children on limited content and context.
mm,
And if we don't, uh, you know, look deeper into our kids and understand the experiences that they bring, with them. And I think every child is unique and every child has the potential to grow and be the best that they can be. But they can only do that in an environment that allows for them to do that. So my hope is that schools would become places where it's a safe space
Yeah,
for everybody to grow. And I hope that we can change the way that we look at education, and it's,
yeah,
really, and just change our mindset about what we think the signs of learning should be like, and have a look at the true signs of learning, and that is our children and how we um, treat them and how we respect them and how we deal with them and form that connected relationships with them on a day-to-day basis.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you've hit the nail on the head. Sometimes it's not about all the additional stuff you put in. Sometimes it's about the few seconds of
Yeah,
kindness,
absolutely.
of pride that you show to a child that
Yeah.
makes a world of difference, that really supports them, motivates them to be there, to participate, gives them a sense of belonging. So I think those little bits, the relational sort of, safety and relationship building, doesn't get sort of prioritized and valued. And without that, we can't create safe spaces, across our schools. So it's so important to make sure we're working towards that.
Yeah, I love what you just said, because our secondary system is probably not built for relationship building, but it's that 30-second that moments that count,
Yeah.
that small moments, that small connections, that
Yeah.
smile, that gesture, that just looking in the eye at sometimes and having that smile, and it's that small interactions that can change the world for our tamariki.
And I think it's Dr. Bruce Perry who says, he talks about how relationships are the best therapy for trauma,
Mm.
and for really reversing the effects of trauma. So I think I know there's lots of sort of challenges with resourcing, and often principals, teachers, struggle with the resourcing and things like that. But these little things, little shifts that, we can already make, they don't really need a whole
Require.
lot of resourcing, that look across the room, even that says, I'm so proud of you, you've done something fabulous, a smile that says, it's so fabulous to have you here. Um, all those little things really make a big difference, don't they? They have an impact on yeah, our kids. So thank you. Look, thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to say before we wrap up our Korero today?
No,
Yeah.
I think okay, that's said too much already, but yeah, no, I really enjoyed just sharing with you, and thank you for the opportunity.
No, look, thank you. We are grateful, and it's been a privilege having you here on our Korero, the last one for the year. And we will be having more Koreros next year as well. What I will do now is I will close us. Oh, actually, hang on. Before I close, let me check quickly the chat. Kat, you're supposed to be letting me know if there's anything there. Okay, so
Yeah,
there's a question.
there's a few things in the chat.
Yes.
Uh,
So the PhD that you mentioned, is that published? Andrea says she would love to read it.
It's at the current moment, it's in the process of being published, and
Okay.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it will be ready shortly.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Linda said part of who we are is definitely important, 100% integrated into everything that you do rather than discrete lessons or programs. And that is how you show up, isn't it? How you bring yourself to every interaction and engagement. Kat has put up a link. Thank you very much, Kat, to the lovely video. How did that video come about, Yolanda? I thought it was a fabulous video.
Yeah, like how everything happens accidentally in my life. And that
Man,
was
I love it.
another accidental,
Yeah. That is so
interaction, and not much time to
yeah.
prepare. It was just a spur of the moment thing as well. Yeah.
It's an amazing video, I must say. And I just love it when I see things like that, because we've been talking about this and connecting. I've been connecting with people around neuroscience trauma-informed approach, especially in education, for like now the 3-4 years. And it's so cool. It's like people come out of the woodwork or something. Every time I see someone doing something, I'm like, wow, one more person's doing this, and they're doing it really well. You understand, because a lot of people claim to be trauma-informed. A lot of schools claim to be trauma-informed. But when you walk in or you interact or you engage and you walk away feeling this child doesn't belong, this family doesn't belong, they're not welcome, and you think you're not actually trauma-informed. The things you're saying, the way you're doing things, it's not. So it's absolutely fabulous to really hear today, Yolanda, about all those little things that you've been doing that make you genuinely, authentically a trauma-informed kura. So thank you for sharing all that.
There's a question here on the
Yes.
chat for you, Yolanda. It's a question. Any words of wisdom for system change, accelerating the shift across Aotearoa?
System.
The big question.
A big question, but I would say everything that we do, we have to be intentional about what we're doing. We cannot change systems if we don't, if we're not deliberate and intentional and know the purpose of why we want to change our systems, and really setting goals to, or milestones to literally work through the barriers. And if you really want to achieve something, you really have to work on it, isn't it? It's not just going to happen by wishing it away, but being really intentional and deliberate about the things that you would like to change.
Can I just add in quickly here? There's one thing that really stands out to me, that one step at a time is so important. I know when I first set up NATINA, in my head, of course, I had this, expectation of, we set up, this is what we're going to do. And I was so disappointed before the year ended even, because I was like, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not doing anything. But I forgot to see what I was doing and what we were doing as a community, all of us, and what was happening. And so I think it took me a while to really, and encouragement, I must say, from my colleagues here, to really remind myself again and again, the little shifts that we're making, the little sort of, steps we're taking, and that is so important, isn't it? So yeah.
And to celebrate those little steps and achievement, always some things have to look back to be able to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think Yolanda, by sharing your story, that allows other people to become part of the conversation and part of the korero, and that's where the growth happens. And just surrounding yourself with other people who are interested in this kaupapa is just such a way of shifting systems, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Any questions before I close us with the karakia from the floor? If anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in and ask anything you have.
Yolanda, there's lots in the chat from people who have been here today and just saying thank you to hear and adoring your passion and heart for our tamariki and for sharing and the great reminders that you give to us. Yeah, so we'll share that with you afterwards. But yeah, absolutely lots of ngā mihi from everybody.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Righty. Okay, so I'll close us with the karakia. Thank you, everybody, for coming along, joining us for this last korero of the year. And thank you, Yolanda, for sharing all your insights. And thank you for the mahi you do, for our kids and our communities. So thank you. Karakia whakamutunga. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai. Haumie, huie, paikie. So restrictions are moved aside, so the pathway is clear to return to everyday activities. Pomari, everyone, and we will hopefully see you next year. At our next korero. We are looking at sending out a newsletter, hopefully, and starting a newsletter in the next year as well. Fingers crossed, one step at a time. We will get there. So, and thank you for all the support across this year. Thank you. Kia ora.
Thank you.